out a new national strategy to combat spying. Evanina says it's no longer just a U.S. government problem. Private companies, universities, and individuals are often being targeted and need to take greater precautions, he says. Greg Myrie, NPR News, Washington.
The U.S. has charged 4 members of China's military with the 2017 cyber attack on Equifax and theft of personal data belonging to tens of millions of people in the United States. The defendants are unlikely to be extradited from China. Amazon is seeking to have President Trump deposed in its legal challenge of a lucrative defense contract that got awarded to Microsoft. That's according to court documents unsealed today in a case that Amazon is pursuing against the Pentagon, accusing it of bias against CEO Jeff Bezos. Here's NPR's Alina Selyukh.
Amazon wants President Trump and Defense Secretary Mark Esper to testify in court about the massive military tech contract that the company lost to Microsoft. Amazon is challenging the Pentagon's award of the $10 billion cloud computing contract. It's called JEDI. It had been mired by controversy for months. At first, rivals alleged Amazon itself had cozy ties with military officials, but then the president got publicly involved, asking Esper to review the bidding process. Amazon later accused Trump of interfering out of a, quote, personal agenda against Bezos because he owns the Washington Post. The White House and the Pentagon are likely to fight Amazon's deposition request. Alina Selyukh, NPR News, Washington.
This is NPR.
Good afternoon. I'm Dave Heller, WHYY News. It's 4:04. Pennsylvania is suing the e-cigarette manufacturer Juul Labs for what state attorneys say is deceptive marketing aimed at teens. Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro announced the suit today to students at Radnor High School in Wayne.
Vaping companies, well, they've made no secret through their actions that young people like you are their targets. Sadly, they've succeeded in getting lots of your fellow students across this country hooked.
The Attorney General's office alleges Juul Labs pushed e-cigarettes to teens by using fruity flavors and downplaying the risks of nicotine addiction. A survey of Pennsylvania youth found 1 in 4 high school students has used an e-cigarette in the last month. State it only takes one school districts that have all followed suit in reading an e-cigarette use online. Registering your car in Delaware County may soon cost more than it used to. It's actually good news. The county's roads are bridges. Wilson Different reports on a new proposal. Counties and municipalities rely on statewide gas tax to pay for things like oil and bridge repairs. There's a problem with that, since Delaware County Council only has 50 million.
The amount of gasoline is filling so down because cars are becoming more fuel efficient.
So, to replace lost revenue, automakers want to add on a $5 surcharge every time a resident levels power. That change should raise around $2 million for local infrastructure projects, an amount the state will match with $2 million of its own. This arrangement already exists in other suburban Philadelphia counties. Now, Delaware taking officials trying to catch up. WHYY News.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Ari Shapiro.
Bloody Coronation, Washington. Chinese health officials reporting that more than 40,000 people have been infected with the new coronavirus. 900 people have died. This appears to be a rapid escalation of outbreak that began just 2 months ago. NPR's global health correspondent Marie Eisenman is in Washington to talk more about it. All right, what are we learning about the new outbreak given the new numbers?
Well, we know that almost all of the cases are in China, and in fact, most of them are still in Hubei, the province where this new coronavirus was first detected. There are only a few hundred or so cases outside China in about 24 or so countries. On the other hand, officials with the World Health Organization say that while China has been providing the broad numbers, China is not providing key information that would tell health officials where this outbreak is going. So China, for instance, will report that they've confirmed, say, 3 trying to send a team from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, but China had been slow to grant permission, and it's just today that the WHO team leaders touched down in China. WHO officials say the rest of the members will arrive soon, between 10 to 15 people, but it's still unclear what they'll be doing.
Is there a sense of just how deadly this virus is at this point?
On the positive side, the WHO says more than 80% of infections result in mild symptoms. So far, just 2% of reported cases roughly have resulted in death. And that percentage could even go down further once officials can find out how many people might have been infected without showing any symptoms at all. But World Health officials also warn that China has access to a lot of life-saving medical technology, ventilators, intensive care units. And at the press conference today, the WHO official who's in charge of emergencies, Dr. Michael Ryan, had this to say.
This disease may appear relatively mild in the context of a sophisticated health system. That may not be the case should this disease reach a system that is not as capable as that of China.
You know, in other words, if the virus spreads to lower income countries in, say, Africa, the death rate could end up being substantially higher.
And yet we're not hearing about Africa so much, right? I mean, there's other continents that are concerned right now.
Right, and in fact, today officials also expressed concern about some of the ongoing transmission that's occurred in Europe, with cases of travelers who arrived in France and in the United Kingdom and then ended up passing it on to other people who passed it on. And they're saying, you know, while that's just a spark, it might be ultimately a larger outbreak from that.
It's NPR's Reed Eisenman. Thank you so much for this update.
Glad to do it.
Americans carry $1.5 trillion in student loan debt, and many of the leading Democratic presidential candidates have plans to address that problem. As New Hampshire voters get ready to cast their ballots tomorrow, I sat down with 3 women who have different perspectives on the issue to hear how their experience with debt is shaping their view of the primary race.
Hey, I'm Jessie. Hi there, I'm Sarah. Just from reading pins on our jackets, we have 3 different opinions about who we're going to vote for.
That's Megan Moody with Jesse Wright and Sarah Grollo. We're at a restaurant called May Kelly's Cottage in the town of North Conway. It's an Irish pub, walls covered in antiques and bric-a-brac overlooking a river and mountains. Jessie's 30, and she's been a waitress here for years.
I was in high school when I first started here and have never dropped that second job. It's been such a blessing to be able to count on it.
She has a master's degree and a job at a conservation nonprofit, but without a second job, she wouldn't make enough to pay down her loans. Each month, her student loan payment costs more than her mortgage. And in addition to those 2 jobs, Jessie started a group that gives grants to young people to help pay down their student debt and keep them living in this rural community. North Conway, New Hampshire is halfway up the border with Maine. It's a place where people go skiing on their lunch break.
How lucky are we to live here and get to do that? Come in a little early or stay a little late, get some vitamin D and have some social energy.
Megan got a $2,000 grant from Jessie's organization to help with her debt, but Megan does not have a college degree. Partway through her junior year at Elmira College in upstate New York, her grandfather died. He was the co-signer on her student loan. And when tuition was due, she didn't have any money to pay for it.
I got a call from my loan company saying that I was no longer eligible for the loan that they awarded me and that I had to figure out how to pay $18,000 by December 15th or something. And so I just came home and I missed one of those payments and I went to collections. You know, borrowing $20,000 a year doesn't sound like that much when you feel like you can pay it off. But the second you make a mistake, which I did and I recognize, you dig yourself into a really, really deep hole.
By the time she's done, she says she's going to wind up paying about $90,000, including interest, for 2.5 years of school, no degree. She's 28 years old, and this experience has shaped almost every aspect of her life in the last decade.
My boyfriend and I have been together for 2.5 years, and he bought our home last year instead of us buying our home, because emotionally, we wanted to buy the home together. But in no way did I want my student debt, if I defaulted again, to affect our whole future.
This all sounds familiar to the 3rd woman at our table.
I get a lot of calls about I can't handle my student loans, I can't buy a house, I can't do this.
Sarah Grollo got a full ride to her college. Now she's 39 and owns a financial planning practice in nearby Freedom, New Hampshire.
Being a 17-year-old, deciding how to go to college and how to pay for it, the idea of borrowing $3,000 a semester or borrowing $30,000 a semester is the same number in their head when they've had no experience with how debt works.
You sign on the same line.
It's the same line. And the concept of paying it off is just not a real number. Anything with that many zeros you haven't really dealt with it makes it a really unclear financial decision, and the rules change.
So a question that I have for all three of you is, where do you draw the line between young people don't have the knowledge they need to make good decisions, and therefore they should not be held responsible for these decisions, and on the other hand, well, you signed on the dotted line, and if you didn't know what you were doing, that's no one's fault but your own.
This is Sarah. I can comment on that. It's the thing I struggle with, you know. I think the root of the problem is more nuanced, but we also have to recognize there's some ownership there, right? Like there's some part of it where someone is signing on those dotted lines, but we also need to make sure we're making that information accessible, right? So do you know what rights you have as a consumer of these loans? There's a lot we need to hold elected officials and governments responsible for, especially the federal programs.
How do you both feel about this question?
I think for me, it's where's the other option? Right now what we're doing is saying, yes, you're 18 and everybody around you is telling you go to the best school that you possibly can get into because that's the best for your future. When we bring to the table an option that is public education past grade 12, that's when we can say, here's the best thing you can do for your financial future is go to higher education past grade 12 that is not going to burden you in the future.
How do you feel about this, Megan?
It's a really excellent question because I don't think that there's like a black and white answer. Like, I'm going to feel a lot of pride when I pay off my own loans because I signed for them. But how would getting to coach field hockey again instead of having a second job allow me to give back to the community that gave me so much?
It's funny, I hear you describing these loans almost like handcuffs, but I also hear that it's really important to you to break the handcuffs yourself, that you don't want somebody to come along
I don't
with
need
you.
no, yeah.
Welcome to New Hampshire. We're going to do it ourselves.
What do you say to people who didn't take out loans and will now say, why should your debt be paid off when I made the decision not to go into debt in the first place?
This is Jessie. This is an economic issue that is beyond one person's personal debt. It's not just, I don't drive on that road, so I'm not going to pay for it. It's this idea that we're contributing to our community.
The different experiences these women have had lead them to support three different candidates. The pin on Megan's coat says Bernie. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders says if he's elected, he will cancel all outstanding student loan debt.
I was like, I've been screaming this at the top of my lungs forever. I'm drowning, and you hear me.
Sarah, the financial advisor, says she was a fan of Sanders 4 years ago, but this time she's wearing a pin for former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
The thing I like about Pete's platform is how much emphasis is on the affordability of college and making, tech schools and other forms of secondary education a priority, because I think loan forgiveness is more of it's addressing a symptom of the overall problem of the cost of higher education.